Hello and welcome to this online session. Thank you for investing some time in learning how to cope better with stress. Today's presentation is From Burnout to Bliss, how a growth mindset can help you overcome stress, achieve success, as well as happiness. And to start off, I want to share with you a story. I don't know if you're familiar with the Greek mythology. There was a specific person called Atlas. He was a titan who rebelled against Zeus and lost. And to make an example out of the people who would rebel against him, Zeus punished Atlas to carry the weight of the world on his shoulder. And I don't know if you're familiar with this picture, but this is Atlas. And you might be wondering, Serban, why are you telling me this uh, Greek mythology story? Well, I wonder if you feel like Atlas, if you feel like you're carrying the weight of your entire world on your shoulders, to where you feel like you're all of these responsibilities are falling on your shoulders, and the pressure keeps mounting more and more, where you're juggling so many things at work, but you also are juggling so many things at home and your personal life, extracurricular activities that you do, and all of these are weighing you down to where it's a lot. It's a lot to the point where you are starting to feel overwhelmed. And here I want to say that burnout is not something that happens overnight. It's not something that we just fall into one day, we're okay, and then the other one we're just completely exhausted. Burnout happens through a progression. It happens as a slow drip to where at first we may just feel the pressure. We're having a lot of tasks where we're pulled in so many directions, but we can handle them. We get frustrated here and there, but we're carrying that weight. But as these pressures continue, you start to feel a little bit overwhelmed. You're starting to be a lot more irritable as responsibilities and tasks come your way, to the point where now you're starting to become a little more negative, a little more pessimistic, to the point where it becomes a burden each and every day on asking for more responsibility, or being asked for more responsibility and being tasked with more responsibility, to the point where you get at a certain level where you end up being mentally and physically exhausted. This slow drip, if not taken care of, it ends up compounding to the point where you're just, it doesn't matter how much you're trying to keep your head above water, you become mentally and physically exhausted. It doesn't matter that you're looking forward to a vacation, let's say to Hawaii, where you think that 10 days of disconnect is great. But in reality, when you get to Hawaii, you're stressed for all the other responsibilities that are keep piling on. And you can't even enjoy that vacation. Or you find yourself at work struggling to maintain all this workload, but then you feel guilty because you're trying to complete them, but you're not present with your family. And all of these end up to the point where you are either checked out, where you're in a effort mode, I just don't know what to do, you're burned out, or it can be even worse, where I know people who have taken medical leave, instructed by a medical professional as well as their family, and to they had to break away from all these responsibilities because they ended up being burned out. Now, you may think that this is just you, but the reality is that there was a study done in 2022 where they showed that 59% of employees reported experiencing some kind of a moderate to severe level of burnout. So just look around and realize that it's not just you. One out of every other person is feeling this overwhelmed, this stressed. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how can we get, how can we overcome burnout? And the main message that I want to convey to you today, and I'm hoping that this is the biggest takeaway that you do from the whole presentation, is that first and foremost, you have to take care of yourself. And I work as a program manager, so I love the story that a colleague of mine shared with me where there was a long term project that she was overseeing and it was ramping down. And as the project was ramping down and saw that she had a lot more bandwidth, like the weight was getting lighter, she went to her boss and asked, "Hey, I'm finishing all these activities. I have some bandwidth. What else do you want me to do?" And the boss looked at her and said, "Never ever ask me that again." That's pretty wild. I was shocked when she said that. But then the boss continued and said, work is like an ocean. We have high tides when we're having to have a lot of things done. We are under pressure. We continuously need to make sacrifices. And that's when the high tide is. But when the low tide comes and you feel like you're not earning your worth, that you're feeling unproductive, that you're somehow procrastinating, or that you're not really assigned enough tasks, take advantage of that low tide and look to rest and recover. Because one thing's for sure, after a low tide, a high tide would always come. So this really exemplified the fact that we really need to be intentional with what we do. I wish my boss would be like that. I wish every boss would be so caring and understanding that we need to take care of that low tide. We need to take care of ourselves when that low tide comes, but that's not always the case. So we really need to be intentional with taking care of ourselves, because let's be honest, you cannot pour out of an empty cup. If you're exhausted, if you're burned out, you can't really help others. It's like putting the mask on an airplane on you first before you help others. You have to take care of ourselves, because you can't give what you don't have. And if you're mentally and physically exhausted, you're not going to be able to help and really produce to the level that you want to produce and to be that productive. So how do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we must learn how to manage ourselves, how to take care of ourselves. So just imagine you being capable of not falling into burnout, of handling all that responsibility, all that weight on your shoulders. Imagine being able to take on more tasks and not feel overwhelmed and not feel frustrated. How would that feel? To be able to carry that weight, to have the capacity to be able to hold that weight and not fall into burnout, to be able to be present at home as well as handle the important things at your job. How would you feel to be productive with all the things that you have to do? And even more, how would you feel if you would be in control of your life? Because a lot of times when we're burned out, everything feels out of control. And dare I say, if we're in control, how would you feel if you would be happy and successful even with carrying all that weight on your shoulders? And how do we do this? Well, we must take a different approach. You can avoid burnout by adopting a different mindset, a different perspective, a different approach on how you manage yourself and how you manage all your responsibilities and your time. And how do we do this? There's three key components that I want to share with you today that will help you not get overwhelmed and rather be productive and successful and feel that you're in control of your life. And these three areas are: first, we need to learn how to manage our energy, our motivation, our drive. If we're not having energy, of course, we're not going to be able to lift all that weight that's on our shoulders. Next, we need to learn how to manage our mindset when it comes to stress. A lot of people look at stress in a wrong approach, and I will talk to you about this one. And third and last, it would be tactical ways of really being intentional of how we manage our time. We all have 24 hours in our day, but some of us don't use it properly. But if you learn the right way to use time that you have in your day, you would be better equipped to handle the responsibilities in your day. So, this is what I want to talk to you about today. And we'll get started with the first portion, which is manage your energy. Okay, let's get on with our presentation. And first, let's talk about how to manage your energy. And I want us to have a different perspective on the way we view energy. And I want to share with you a story. This was over a decade or so ago. I was working at a different company, and it was fascinating to see at 8 o'clock, while I was dragging myself towards the coffee pot, there was one colleague who was always walking in full of energy, always just smiling, feeling like he can conquer the world, while I was looking to get that cup of coffee. And even worse, afternoon, after I had a food coma from a pad thai or something, as I was walking back into the office, the same colleague, same kind of level of energy, always very chipper and full of, there's just a ball of energy, to where I started wondering if there's something there. And even more, as the day would end, I would snail my way out of the company. My colleague, the same thing, full of energy, always just so energetic. And it was just baffling for me to see. And I was a younger person at that point, and it was just curious to me on how this person who was older than me had so much energy. So I went up to him one day and asked him, "Hey, how is it that you have so much energy?" And he looked at me and he said, with a straight face, he told me, "Serban, you cannot be at your best self if you're not in your best health. You cannot be at your best self if you're not in your best health." That really struck me, because up until that point, I wasn't really intentional about what I was eating, about how I was sleeping, exercise, and all that. I was careless. I would stay up late, eat crappy food. I would exercise here and there, but never with a lot of intention. And no wonder I had this up and down crash in the afternoon after a lot of food, and then I would have to drink an energy drink to get my energy back up. And once my colleague told me that all his energy comes from taking care of his health, it really resonated with me and it made sense. And this is what I want to share with you. There's 4 pillars of how we can take care of our health in such a way that it gives us energy. And those pillars are called what Jay Shetty cleverly named taking care of your MEDS, of your meds. And that stands for taking care of your mental energy, taking care of ensuring that you have access, that you exercise, making sure that you have a proper diet, as well as proper sleep. And here I want to pause for a second and say that yes, it's nice to be able to look better in your body when you're exercising and doing a proper diet, having a proper diet and all these things. But to me, I look at it from a different perspective, from the perspective of having enough energy as well as motivation to handle these responsibilities that we have to carry in our day. This is why I think ensuring that we are intentional about protecting our energy is vital, is to be able to carry that weight. That's why we need the energy. Because if we're lethargic throughout our day, of course, we're not going to want to come home and be intentional of taking care of whatever passions you have, that you want to do while you're at home or at work. If you didn't get a good enough night of sleep, you're not going to be as sharp and as focused as you could if you had that proper sleep. So these four pillars to me are critical, not for looking good, but for ensuring that we can lift that weight, that heavy burden that we carry in our shoulders. And here I want to touch on quickly about exercise. I just want to say, I think it's already been, there's books and everything written about it. Why should you exercise? And you don't like going to the gym, maybe you would tell me. Exercise can come in many forms. You maybe just going for a walk. You may just want to play tennis or golf, or you might go for a hike or go for a swim. Whatever it is, it has been scientifically proven that exercise can be even better than medication when it comes to dealing with anxiety and even depression. So exercise is just I look at my whole energy that I have in my body as a battery like a battery in your phone. And when we exercise, even though it seems like we're exerting energy, the energy that we get from exercising is twofold. So exercise is more like a battery booster. I always encourage each one of you to whatever you may do, whatever you can do. It's not necessary that you're going to go now to the gym 5 times a week. You may just want to choose to go 15 minutes a day for a walk. But exercising is necessary for us to supercharge our battery. And then when it comes to diet, again, many books have been written, and it has been shown that in being intentional with the food that we're consuming is critical for not having that crash, right? It's just, for me, avoiding sugary foods as well as processed food is critical, because I've seen this on an experiment a while back where someone had some processed food that they ate versus a homemade similar meal, and the processed food took hours, many more hours to digest. So if you think about it from the energy standpoint, you realize that if you're eating processed food, you're exerting a lot of energy. You're expanding and giving away a lot of energy because the nutrition that you have is not properly digested. So exercise and diet are very critical in ensuring that we boost our battery and we're not consuming our battery, so we don't have those roller coaster rides where we're in a food coma and then we have to counter with an energy drink and so on and so forth. Now, moving on, the two big pillars that I want to emphasize here a lot more are sleep and mental energy. And first, I want to talk about sleep. Well, like I said, the analogy of a battery, I think it's very appropriate. Think about those times where you weren't able to get enough sleep. It's like waking up with your phone just halfway charged. By the time 8 hours would be gone, your battery would be fully depleted. If we're not intentional of ensuring that we get a good night's sleep, adequate sleep, we're not going to be able to have the capacity to handle the challenges that we face throughout our day. And the reality is that in America, one out of three people are sleeping less than 6 hours, when the reality is that we should all strive to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Because when you get that good quality sleep of 7 to 8 to 9 hours, even though it may seem that you're wasting time because you're sleeping, you're a lot more productive because you're sharper, you're more engaged. You don't feel like a piñata when you're waking up just kind of wondering where exactly you're going to go. You're a lot more intentional if you get that proper sleep. And how? to get that proper sleep. I know a lot of people struggle with having a good night's sleep, even though they may sleep 7 to 9 hours. I want to share with you the 3-2-1 method. And this one is 3 hours before bed, we should stop doing any kind of work for our employee or our business. 2 hours before, we should stop eating any kind of food. The same reason I was talking about food before. We want to go to bed uh, to rest and recover, not to go to bed and have our body still work on digesting the food, and instead of restoring our energy, using energy. And then 1 hour before bed, no technology. This kind of goes in line with no work. When we're watching some kind of a news or some kind of a high intensity movie, and then we're trying to go to sleep right away, what happens is those high intensity scenes start ruminating in your brain while you're trying to fall asleep, or if even in when you're falling asleep. A lot of times people get to this point where they have to work, and then they are on their phone or they answer emails, and then they try to go to bed, but of course they're still wired. They're tired, but they're still wired because of all that information that came right a few minutes before they went to bed. So if you're looking to get proper sleep, look to ensure that you avoid any kind of technology an hour before. Talk with your partner, talk with a good friend, listen to a meditation, or read a good book. Whatever you do is wind down, so you tell your body that it's about to go to rest and restore. And when you do so, you will be more capable of getting that quality sleep. And when you get that quality sleep, you'll be able to wake up energized with a full battery. So look to apply the 3-2-1 method when it comes to getting a good night's sleep to energize your body. Next, I want to touch on the mental energy that we have, because it's our brain weighs 2% of our overall body, yet it consumes 20% of our overall energy. Our brain is an energy hog. And if we're not hog, and if we're not intentional of exactly where we're distributing our energy, we're not going to have enough for the important things. And I'm always thinking that back in the day, when it came to news, for example, you would have to wait for the newspaper to know what happened into your neighborhood or maybe in the country, but even that was so restrictive. Afterwards, then they came 7 o'clock at night news, where you would get a full hour of that information that you would soak in. But now with the advent of internet and the phone, where you get instant notification, it's like you're continuously bombarded with this energy suckers. They're constantly chipping at your energy because it's too much for our brain to handle all of the things that are happening in the world. And I always look to encourage each one of you to avoid the weapons of mass distraction. And these are, of course, our phones, the news, the television. All of these put a tremendous amount of pressure, and they're an absolute drainer for our mental energy. So if you can, look to protect your energy, but by especially early in the morning, instead of giving your time to someone by picking up your phone and reacting to all these situations and all these notifications that happen, instead of doing that, protect your energy by starting off your day without looking at your phone. Plan your day. Look to be grateful for all the things that you have, instead of diverting all your energy, your mental capacity, to things that are not as important as being able to carry that weight on your shoulders. So be intentional and protect your energy. And next, we're going to go to the second portion of our presentation, and that is managing our mindset. Okay, next up we have on new perspective when it comes to managing our mindset. And here I would like for you to take a look at this picture and ask yourself, what do you see? And when you answer, I don't want you to think about the fact that there are some deers and there's a lake and a cabin. I'm actually asking you to look at it from a perspective of what does it make you think about? What is it that you're thinking when you see this picture? Because I'll just give you some examples. Someone may look at this picture and think that it's a magical place where you're disconnected from the technology and you're in the middle of nature and it's so refreshing. If you are a nature person, if you're someone who doesn't like nature, then you look at this picture and you think this is an awful place. So it's the same place, but there's two different perspectives. Someone may look at this and say that it's a wonder of nature with animals and fish all around, where someone may think this is a great hunting place. So, what I'm trying to say here is that we can look at the exact same thing and see it totally different. There's multiple perspectives and multiple ways of looking at certain things, not just the one that it instinctively comes up for us. And this is where I want to introduce you to two crucial new ideas, a new perspective that really changed the way I live my life, as well as the way I handle stress and overwhelm. And the first idea is the notion of a growth mindset, where I love this quote from Henry Ford, in which he said that whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. Whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. And what does this mean? Well, when it comes to a lot of the things that we have to do in our day, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of challenge. And most time when we get to the point where we feel like we're getting burned out, we're starting to be very negative and tell ourselves certain stories that are in a fixed mindset, to the point where we would say that, oh, I just can't handle this many responsibilities. Oh, I'm pulled in too many directions. This is too much for me to handle. And I can tell you that this is happens to everybody, and even to me. For the longest time I used to tell myself that I I'm a very poor communicator. I had a deep insecurity about being able to communicate because I was an immigrant and I had a funny accent and I mix up my words and they don't sound properly and I don't know if my message come across. And that was a fixed mindset because I was always afraid of pushing myself to be in that discomfort, to challenge myself. And every time I would speak, I would feel a lot of stress. Now, a growth mindset, on the other hand, when I was introduced to this notion, that has really helped me in many of the things that now I'm challenged with, is the fact that, yes, the idea of speaking in front of people or being a good communicator or handling whatever responsibilities you have in your life, they are difficult and they are challenging and they feel overwhelming. But we can overcome them. We can get better. We can improve at anything that we want. And this is the notion of a growth mindset, where challenges are not here to crush us. They're helping us learn how to be better, grow and evolve and progress in anything that we do. When we have this new perspective, this new shift on all the responsibilities that we have to deal in our lives, and instead of looking at them like, oh my God, here's one more thing that I have to do, looking at it and saying, oh my God, yeah, here's another thing that I'm going to be able to learn from. This new perspective is very beneficial. And when you overlap this idea of a growth mindset with the notion that stress can actually be beneficial for you. Stress, I'm going to say this again, stress can actually be beneficial for you. And here, I want to pause for a second and say that I'm not referring to the stress that I'm referring to is not the one that your water heater broke and now you're in scrambling mode because it's wintertime and you don't have hot water. I'm talking, or you're running and you have a car accident and now you're having to figure out insurances and all this stuff. That is stressful in the moment. And yes, I understand and I get overwhelmed for those as well. However, the stress that I'm talking about, the stress that is slow dripping, that makes us fall into burnout, this type of stress is something that if we shift our perspective, if we look at it from a different angle and understand that that type of stress can be beneficial for us, it can actually help us become better. And you might be wondering, Shaban, now you're just talking crazy. What are you talking about? Well, these two notions of a growth mindset and stress can be beneficial were actually introduced for in a study of over 4,000 adolescents, and where they were talking about empowering them with this idea that stress is a challenge that can be managed rather than an insurmountable obstacle. And the study, once they introduced these two notions to a group of students and told them about the growth mindset and told them that stress can be beneficial, the study found that it 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 significantly reduced the stress level, the cognitive stress level. So the notion that the adolescents had is about stress, their stress level about it, their thoughts, those ruminating thoughts about I can't handle this, lowered. So once those thoughts lowered, then their cardiovascular reactivity lowered as well, which in turn lowered their anxiety, and in turn, and then on the flip side, it stimulated their physical well-being as well as their academical success. And all of this is in very technical words, but the other way of looking at this and saying it is that stress can actually be beneficial and it can make us more productive. So if you think about it, let's just take an example of a long time ago, whatever in recent. Let's just go with something that you had to do recently that was up against a deadline. When you think about it, I've always found myself that I am a lot more focused, a lot more intentional when I know that I have to submit something, to deliver something when it's up against a deadline. And that pressure, that stress, it actually makes me a lot sharper. It makes me more focused. It makes me more productive. And it makes me more intentional with my time. And I don't have time to think about the stress because that stress is propelling me and moving me forward. And I recognize now that stress is actually something that makes us more resilient. It helps us grow. It helps us progress faster. And this was something that was quite revolutionary for me. And I personally deal with a lot of high stakes situation at work, and for me to be able to handle all those situations, I embrace these two notions, and I actually have a sticker above my monitor in which it says that this is the way. This is the way that I grow. I tell myself every time I'm walking into a high pressure meeting, when I am having to deal something that seems stressful, I also tell myself that this is the way, this is how I learn and grow. And then when I am able to understand and adopt this new perspective, then I'm more capable of handling stress and handling all the responsibilities rather than letting them crush me. They make me more resilient. They help me become better. And this is the new perspective that I challenge you to adopt. And with that, we can go to the third portion of our presentation. Moving on to the third perspective that I want to talk to you about, and on how to manage ourselves better so that we can manage the stress and all the responsibilities that we have in our day in such a way that we don't end up burnout, but rather we can be extremely productive and resilient when it comes to holding on and lifting that weight. And the next portion is about how we can manage our time better. And this is where I get a little tactical about how we can structure our day in such a way that we have the energy, we have the mindset. Now we just need the proper tools to structure our day in such a way that we maximize our time. And how do we maximize our time? Well, I when I talk to a lot of people that I work with, as well as clients that I work with, I hear this very often. I don't have enough time. I'm just too busy to do all of these things. I don't know if that you've ever heard that or you've ever said that, but this is something that's very common, and I constantly say the same thing to everybody. We all have 24 hours in our day. It's not like I have more and you have less, or someone else has a lot more because they're richer or something like that. We all have 24 hours our day. And the question is, how do you use your day? How do you structure your day? Because let's be honest, time management is life management. The way you manage your time, it allows you to be more in control of your life. But when we're not in control of our time, our life just feels like a chaos. And it really isn't about time as much as it is about how do we handle the things that are important to us, the most important part, the priorities, the things that are the needle movers. And when it comes to stress, a lot of time we're very much in a reactive mode. We're constantly just having a knee-jerk reaction to whatever the next crisis happens. And the best way I found to explain how we partition our time during our day is with an old method by Eisenhower, the Eisenhower matrix, which was made popular in the 50s. And here I want to just go quickly over the four quadrants. And for the crisis mode, it's where everything's urgent and important. This is where we are in firefighter mode. And when it comes to being overwhelmed, when you feel like you're stressed out, you can't handle all the responsibilities, you're just going from the next fire to the next fire, you find yourself in the urgent and important quadrant. But a lot of times we find ourselves in urgent and non-important, where someone may come up to you, a friend or a family member, and say, hey, I need you to do this, or a colleague at work, hey, can you do this? And we felt compelled to drop what we're doing, what's important to us, our priorities, and help that urgent but not important task. Another portion where we spend a lot of our time is in quadrant 4, in the unnecessary. And this is where we may be watching YouTube a little bit longer, or stay on social media more than just a quick break. We're just mindlessly scrolling for hours, or watching the news again, going back to protecting your mental energy. In that fourth quadrant is where nothing is urgent and nothing is important. It's just a time waster. So then the question is, where should we spend our time? And of course, we should be always looking to prioritize the things that are very important to us, but they're not firefighting moments. They're not urgent. This is where most of our time we should be spent planning and executing what is important to you that doesn't have to be done in the next hour, tomorrow. What is your long-term goal? At work, you may have a big project. At home with your family, you may want to have certain goals. And instead of always reacting, If we're properly planning and making progress on the things that are not urgent and important, that is when we will be able to lower our stress. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, there's maybe even 25% of the crisis of urgent and important is not indicative of how the reality is. When we're getting close to being burnout, that crisis mode may be even higher, to where we're just constantly going from firefighting to firefighting. And again, on the non-important part, we may be spending a lot of times on the things that are not relevant to us, but we find all these constant interruptions as necessary. And then, of course, a lot of time when we are falling into burnout, a lot of time we feel like we're out of control and we want to distract ourselves. So then we spend a lot of time procrastinating and avoiding things. And that is when we're spending a lot of time in the non-important and non-urgent quadrant, where nothing is, and all of the things are unnecessary. And here, I would spend some time with my clients to really break down their day, their weeks, and understand where exactly in these four quadrants their time is going, their 24 hours. And then we need to learn how to minimize the urgent and important. The crisis mode, we need to lower it. And all that to move it into planning and progress. Of course, again, when it comes to the urgent stuff and non-important, it's a big chunk of being reactive throughout our day, but we should look to minimize it as well, along with eliminating the unnecessary, deleting everything that's not important and not urgent, to the point where we spend most of our time in the non-urgent but very important, in the things that are priority to us, that matter to us. That's where we should spend all of our time. And now you may be wondering, how can I lower those three quadrants so that I increase the fourth, the green quadrant, to where I'm more in the planning and progress phase? And the reality is that the more we are capable of planning, the more the crises are going to be lowered. And the more we're able to eliminate the crisis by planning properly our time, the more the stress level will diminish and the more we will feel in control of our time. Now, when it comes to the urgent and unimportant, this one is very crucial to apply, as well as to in the non-urgent and non-important. There's two critical tools that some of us are going to have a hard time with, but are important for you to learn and are important for you to adopt as fast as possible and in as many cases as you can. And the first one that I want to share with you is your ability to say no. Saying no, it's not mean. It's not something that you should be ashamed of. We've all been programmed that if we refuse someone, then we're rude. But what happens when you feel all that pressure on your shoulders and someone comes to you and says, hey, can you do this also for me? If you're saying yes to that, you're already saying no to all the other things that you have to do in your life. Or you say yes, but you're not being able to complete the work that the other person is asking, and now they're mad at you too. Learning how to say no, it is vital in this process. We should not say yes to everything, but rather we should learn to say no to a lot of things. And this is where we need to take stock on the things that are critical and important to us, the things that we want to prioritize. May that be in our job as well as at home. But the more we know which ones are important to us, which ones are the things that move the needle in our lives, and eliminate the things that are not by saying no, the more we will be able to take control of our lives. And the second tool to learn how to move as much as possible into the green quadrant, into the planning and progress phase, is learning how to ask for help and ask for support. You see, I'm always thinking that your boss doesn't know everything that's happening at home, and your spouse doesn't know everything that's happening at work. So they may ask you to do a lot on both sides. But when you're transparent with both of them and you'll say, hey, I know you're asking me for all this, but I have going on this, this, and this. Can you have someone else help me? Can you do this? Can asking for help is kind to you, but it's kind for others, because now you're painting the picture for others on where exactly you are. And for most cases, people are willing and eager to help. So learn how to say, learn how to ask for help. It's very important. I want to thank you for taking the time and learning some of these tools that will help you manage your stress and become more productive. I want to be honest with you. I've been on a 5-year journey where 5 years ago I was a hot mess. I wasn't productive. I was spending most of my time in the non-important and non-urgent task, as well as an urgent and unimportant. I would constantly find myself distracted with so many things in my life where I wasn't in control of my day at all. Time was something that was fleeing me, and I was irresponsible. And it took me a long time to apply a lot of these tools, but everything that I've shared with you today are tools that I personally use in my life each and every day. I ensure that I take my meds. I ensure that I look at stress differently and that I adopt a growth mindset and embrace the challenges. And I always plan my day. I don't like to be out of control and reactive. I always like to be planning and acting according to the plan. Because to be honest with you, today in my life, I am more responsible. I have a lot more responsibility in every aspect of my life, professionally, personally, in my passion, in my dealing with my clients. I have a lot more responsibility today, but I don't let stress and overwhelm tackle me. I've always looked to manage my stress and then look to be in control of my time in such a way that I have the energy to deal with all the responsibilities, yet not feel overwhelmed. And this is where Atlas, even though he may be a symbol of punishment, but he is also a symbol of resilience and perseverance. Atlas is someone who's has a big responsibility to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, yet he's capable. He's becoming stronger and more resilient on holding that weight of the world. And that's what I want you to do by incorporating a few of these tools that I shared with you today. And I want to I want to remind you that wherever you are in your life, if you're heading towards burnout, what got you there, it was a slow drip. This didn't happen overnight. And in order for us to turn our lives around and not let this overwhelm and stress weigh us down, we must be intentional and take our time in getting out of that slow drip. And what the way we must do this is, of course, what I shared with you at the beginning is really being intentional of taking care of yourself first. Put on that mask onto you, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And one more thing is, I don't want you to try to change and apply everything that I shared with you today. Don't look for a revolution in your life, but rather a small evolution. Establishing good habits takes time, and it should start small. I urge you to not try to change everything, just try to change one thing. And that may be you going for a walk in the middle of your day, or not looking at your phone early in the morning, or whenever you walk into a high pressure meeting or you're stressed, reminding yourself that this is the way and everything's going to be okay. And learn to adopt new perspectives. This new mindset of the fact that stress is something that can be beneficial for you. Because the more you're capable of shifting your perspective and learning that stress is beneficial and you have the capacity to handle the weight of your world on your shoulder, the more you will be happier and the more you'll be more successful. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to connect with you again. Thank you.